Turn up the volume for this. The judge overseeing the case of the father mistakenly deported to El Salvador prison slammed the Trump administration for its inaction today. The judge indicated she is weighing holding them in contempt. Gabe Gutierrez has the details.
Tonight, a new escalation in the fight between the Trump administration and the federal court system.
I will not stop fighting until I see my husband alive.
Late today, the wife of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the father of 3 deported to a mega prison in El Salvador, walked into a Maryland courthouse where a judge demanded to know what the federal government has done to abide by a court order to return him to the U.S., saying there will be no tolerance for gamesmanship or grandstanding. The White House is arguing that Abrego Garcia was not mistakenly deported. That contradicts earlier statements from a Justice Department prosecutor and the Solicitor General, who acknowledged his deportation had been an administrative error.
He's from El Salvador, so that's a decision up to El Salvador.
Legal experts say the case is about much more than just one deportee and raises questions about due process for anyone in the U.S.
Abrego Garcia was a foreign terrorist. He is an MS-13 gang member. He was engaged in human trafficking. He illegally came into our country. And so deporting him back to El Salvador was always going to be the end result.
But Abrego Garcia has never been criminally convicted in either country. He did enter the U.S. illegally in 2011. But in 2019, an immigration judge determined he should not be deported to his native El Salvador because he might face danger. Another judge agreed evidence showed Abrego Garcia was a member of MS-13, but his attorneys argue that was based on questionable testimony from a confidential informant.
No evidence has been submitted about this allegation, proving this allegation.
The Supreme Court has ruled the Trump administration must facilitate Abrego Garcia's return to the U.S., but the Department of Homeland Security said today if he does show up at a port of entry, the U.S. would either deport him to another country or remove his protected status and send him back to El Salvador. The legal fight is quickly becoming a test case for the limits of presidential power and the country's system of checks and balances.
They need to comply with the Supreme Court's directive, or the Supreme Court needs to enforce its order aggressively, which should include contempt.
Let's bring in Mark Joseph Stern, senior writer covering courts and the law at Slate. Mark, the judge indicated she could potentially hold the administration in contempt. What does that even look like?
It looks like issuing sanctions against the Justice Department lawyers who are refusing to comply with her orders, and potentially other members of the Trump administration who are not doing what both this district court judge and the Supreme Court ordered the government to do. And if the officials refuse to pay those sanctions, then we are looking at enforcement, possibly criminal contempt, and an escalation from there. This is quickly boiling over into a pretty extreme conflict between the judiciary and the executive, probably the most extreme we've seen so far in Trump's second term.
Here's what's sticking with me. On one hand, Donald Trump has been saying, we're the United States, we're the most powerful country in the world, and I'm that world leader. But now he's basically deferring to the president of El Salvador on securing Garcia, saying, oh, it's not me. This guy's holding it up. Are we really supposed to believe that the biggest, baddest president in the whole wide world can't make it happen because the president of El Salvador said no?
No, it's absurd. And the fact that Justice Department lawyers are willing to stand in front of a court of law and make that claim besmirches the entire legal profession in its mendacity. Everyone knows that if Trump asked the president of El Salvador to return Abrego Garcia, that the president of El Salvador would do it. The district court has said that the Trump administration must ask, but the administration has not asked. As Judge Sini said in her courtroom today, there has been no direct request. There has been disassembling. There has been some sort of chatter about it in the Oval Office, but at no point has Trump or anybody else simply said to El Salvador, please send back Abrego Garcia. And until the government does that, it will stand in direct defiance of Judge Sini's order and also of the Supreme Court's extremely clear directive that the government needs to bring this man home.
The administration isn't even responding to the federal judge. Are they basically daring the Supreme Court to intervene and banking on the fact that they won't?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The administration feels emboldened by what the Supreme Court did last week, which was issue this sort of compromise decision where it reminded the district court that it needed to give deference to the executive in foreign affairs. You know, the Trump administration has gone out there in front of the cameras and in all these court filings saying that means that they don't have to do anything she asks. They are stonewalling her over and over again. I think, frankly, insulting her to her face. You know, I was in that courtroom today. It was fascinating to watch her actively lose patience with the Justice Department attorney arguing this case because she could tell that he was lying. She could tell that he was violating his basic ethical obligations of candor to the court. But so far, she's not quite sure what to do about it. I think her path now is to build a record of defiance, right? She's ordered pretty intensive discovery over the next 2 weeks. She's laid out a roadmap for the plaintiffs to get real information about what the government is or is not doing. And I think her plan is to force the government to either do this thing, ask for this man back, or show in every way possible that it's defying her orders, show that it's acting in contempt, and then, and only then, is she going to take this rather dramatic step of sanctioning the attorneys.
You wrote today that this episode is reaching a terrifying breaking point. I feel like we've, not that we're the boy who cried wolf, but I feel like we've been talking terrifying breaking points, constitutional crises a lot. Why is this one the most? Why is this one the showstopper?
Well, I think in part because the Supreme Court has already intervened and now the Trump administration is refusing to abide by its decision, trying to seize upon wiggle room that doesn't really exist. And in so doing, it is continuing to press this argument that should terrify everyone, which is that the government can abduct any person off the street. And as long as it ships them to a foreign prison fast enough, then there is nothing that federal courts can do to bring them back. That argument does not end with non-citizens or undocumented people or even green card holders. That argument would extend to natural born American citizens. And it would mean that the government could take you, throw you into a foreign prison, and then disclaim all responsibility over bringing you back, even if it did so by mistake, because it doesn't want to ask and it doesn't have any obligation to. That is something that should chill everybody to the bone, because I think it really represents the end of due process in this country.